Hello viewer, the Nameless Scholar here. Once again, it is time for me to rant and rave cynically into my microphone. This time it will be on the Primarchs, especially the Loyalist Primarchs, and why they should have never returned to Warhammer 40k, and instead stayed in the Horus Heresy. They are a part of the reason as to why the modern Imperium is everything I hate about modern 40k. And the reason why is because I actually love the Imperium. It's that when I don't tell people how to think and what they want to hear, but when I'm not the person telling people how to think, I get scolded by both sides of the culture war. I was called a redditor even though I'm like the public enemy number 3 of the Trench Crusade community. Which, by the way, it's been a year since I posted my video on Trench Crusade. The video wasn't even that good. I literally did all of it in a single day, but lo and behold, it is my most viewed video. So why do I have a gripe with the Primarchs returning to 40k? It is because before 8th edition, the Primarchs were the stuff of legends. The Horus Heresy was such a long time ago that it had all faded into legend. Like, it was the myth of creation, the genesis of the Imperium of man itself. The Loyalist Primarchs were either all dead or missing, which had all become figures of myth. Whereas the traitor Primarchs were active, it's that more than half the time they were too lazy to do anything, and they were more whimsical beings that did as they pleased. Which most Imperial citizens didn't even know what chaos was, or that the Emperor had more than 9 sons. There was mystery and awe to it. The Loyalist Primarchs were inspirational figures to the Space Marine chapters and the mortal men that knew of them. Figures that were like those of mythology to us. It's that when they started returning, this started to change. Especially with Rabute Gilliman's return, it changed. There was now actual hope, even though Cadia had fallen. I have stated earlier in my Why Modern 40k Sucks videos that GW is essentially keeping the Imperium on life support, and they should be getting decimated on all fronts by Chaos, Necrons, Orcs, and the Tyranids. Especially the Dark Imperium, because the natural conclusion of all these things is another end times, but GW cannot afford to kill their cash cow. And because they cannot kill their cash cow, what they opt for instead is to turn Warhammer 40k into Age of Sigmar in space. It's why on the tabletop, although the meta models always change, there is a reason why the named characters are over-designed and usually have a tactical rock that they stand on, is because GW realized that it is much more profitable to lean on Herohammer than it is not. Herohammer is when one uses named characters in an army list, and it might as well revolve around them. Again, this changes depending on which models are good on what edition. It's that the idea is there. And it's why they are bringing the Primarchs back. I was more concerned than anything when Perturabo was revealed. It's that the only thing I was relieved by was that Perturabo had a helmet. The Herohammer aspect is more prevalent in the lore at all times than in the game. Aside from the obvious advertisement potential in the lore, new events all revolve around the same characters. Titus is a good example. And another example is Dawn of War. Dawn of War once used to be the saga of the Blood Ravens, but for some ungodly reason, the Dark Angels and Lionel Johnson are a part of the campaign. What are they doing there? And the thing is, according to Steve Bloom, voiced by Steve Bloom, Dawn of War 4 will take place at Cronus, where Dark Crusade took place in. Everything takes place in the same locations. modern 40k essentially turned into a lamer version of both pro wrestling and the Horus Heresy. The same characters doing the same good old, not even good old, same tired old fighting plot thingy. In 40k, named characters being scary was more of a Horus Heresy thing, which actually originated from Warhammer Fantasy Battle because that game's named characters are scary. In 40k, aside from the exceptions such as Abaddon, Karn, and Osdrubal Vect off the top of my head, the other named characters weren't all that scary. For example, a Necron Lord can go toe-to-toe with Ozek Ahriman. In a duel, I mean. But the Primarchs returning one by one, the setting didn't even lose its grimdark. It lost its scale and mystery. Before 8th edition, 40k didn't revolve around particularly any character. It was about humanity raging against the dying of the light, with Primarchs becoming legends of the past, with humanity having nothing but themselves to survive the horrors of the galaxy. As much as this is the greatest weakness, this was also the greatest strength of Warhammer 40k. The Imperium, even if it can be argued that they are the good guys of 40k or not, are definitely the protagonists of 40k. But when the Primarchs returned, instead of becoming the stories of humanity's survival, it became the sagas of the returning Primarchs, both loyalists and traitor. Although it had its moments such as Robute Guilliman's famous speech of "Why do I still live?" and I am also told good things about the lion, son of the forest, it became about them is my problem. Even though if I wanted this, I'd rather read the Horus Heresy, which is just better than 40k because it doubles down on the Imperium-centric nature of it. And I'm not even an Imperium main. And I have Space Marine fatigue, hint hint. When they started bringing back the Primarchs one by one, the narrative became about them. Even though there is a reason why, for example, the Imperial Guard always existed in the first place. The Imperial Guard on the tabletop were originally about trying to win despite the game being balanced around toughness 4 armies. In the lore, whereas the Space Marines were the Angels of Death, created in the image of the long-lost Primarchs, and by extension the God Emperor himself. The Imperial Guard were ordinary men and women, formed of the elite of their planetary defense force, oftentimes the first and the last line of defense of a planet, that fought because they must, because it was most likely that they will not get Space Marine allies. So it is them, their lasguns, and their vehicles fighting against Greenskins, any of the Eldar, Chaos Space Marines, Tyranids, demons, and much, much more. This is why Darktide works, despite its rocky launch, because being an Imperial Guard is to be one amongst untold billions, to defend the cruelest, most bloody regime imaginable, because it is your only way to survive. Now that Robute Guilliman and Lionel Johnson are back, and Rogel Dorn is seemingly going to return soon, it became about them. The Indomitus Crusade and whatever the Lion is doing at wherever, it became about their story to try to keep the Imperium in one piece. Before 8th edition, the Imperium had nothing but themselves and the Imperial Creed to keep itself in one piece. No one but themselves was going to save them. They knew it, and instead of giving in to despair, they raged against the dying of the light one last time because they wouldn't go down without a fight. We already had the Primarch's story somewhat resolved in the Horus Heresy, and the subsequent scattering. But you might say that 40k was very stagnant before 8th edition, and the story just didn't move along. First off, 40k was in essence a sandbox setting. It wasn't like Star Wars, where the timeline moved in one direction and everything else spawned from the movies and became a setting that way with the expanded universe or legends, if you prefer, but a setting where the battles you fought on the tabletop were the stories. It was a sandbox for you to have fun with your friends. It's why there will never ever be another Warhammer 40k, and it's why people cannot let go of it. Secondly, even if we say for the sake of the argument that the story finally moving along is a good thing, it doesn't need the Primarchs to move along. And making it have the Primarchs to move it along just makes 40k worse off because it takes the spotlight from humanity itself and not just have Space Marines, but the Primarchs and the occasional named characters at the spotlight. Mainly Titus, but I already talked about that one. So the story can move forward even without the Primarchs, but the real reason why the Primarchs are returning is because GW has turned Warhammer 40k into Age of Sigmar in space, and most of you haven't realized it. So, they did this because not only do they want to do something new, which is grimdark sci-fi high fantasy, GW realized that there is profit to be earned if they fully lean on the Herohammer aspect of Warhammer 40k by returning the Primarchs and doing that by selling their new, overly designed, named character models, Primarchs or not, that all stand on tactical rocks. That's why the Primarchs started returning, even though they never should have. But hey, I'm just an opinionated cynic on the internet, and this video is just filler for my following videos to the tens of hundreds of people who consistently watch me now. If you want to support said cynic, consider donating to me on Patreon. I'd be forever grateful. Anyways guys, this is going to be it for this video. I am the Nameless Scholar. And remember,
apathy is death.